Looks like we still have a few people signing in, so we'll give it another couple of minutes. I know it's the first time using the WebEx application for some people, so some might be having some technical difficulties. So we'll give folks a couple more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started with kind of the welcoming. While we wait another minute or two, Lisa, would you be able to pull up the agenda for the meeting? Because we're going to start with an overview of that. All right, very good. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I guess I'll ask by show of thumbs up or head nodding. Can everybody hear me okay? Excellent. I'm seeing thumbs up and nodding heads. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Drew Vetter. I'm the Deputy Administrative Officer in the County Executive's Office. And it is my great privilege and honor to be leading this work group, which we are so pleased each one of you has agreed to serve on or participate in a number of capacities. We're joined by stakeholders from across various constituencies. We have members of the affordable housing development community. We've got advocates involved in organizations that have been working for a very long time on affordable housing issues in Baltimore County. We're joined by community leaders and neighbors from throughout the county. We have some real estate attorney practitioners with us. We've got some policy experts, former county officials. So we've assembled quite a great group here. And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to schedule the first meeting for 2 hours. I don't know if we're going to need that full time, but I did want to give everyone an opportunity to kind of go around and introduce themselves and to our fellow work group members and speak just very briefly about the organizations and experience that you're representing. So again, thanks for being here. This is just a quick snapshot of the agenda for today. We've got a relatively ambitious agenda, but I'm confident we'll be able to get through it. We have the honor of being joined by our county executive, County Executive Olszewski. He is on the line. I see he's going to welcome us with some brief opening comments, and then continue on with the rest of his busy schedule. But we really appreciate him taking some time out of his day to be with us here to kick off this really important effort. From there, we're going to have everyone introduce themselves. And then next, we've prepared some data and background information that we think will be of interest to members of the group, and will kind of set the stage for some of our work moving forward. And then I think we want to have some discussion about what we are going to do here and how we're going to do it, and talk about potentially breaking up into some subcommittees. We'll discuss some organizational matters and next steps in terms of where this group goes from here. And then I want to remind everyone, I think you already know, but this is a meeting that is open to the public. This is a public body. The login information was provided on the county's website for this, and I can see that we do have a few participants sort of external to our panel here viewing. So just a reminder that this is a proceeding that's conducted in public. This meeting is going to be recorded, and the link to the meeting will be available on the work group's webpage for anyone to view afterwards. And just a reminder that the documents that we review, the minutes, and any discussions that we have are public as well. So just a reminder on that. We will provide an opportunity for anyone from the public to address the work group towards the end of the meeting via the chat function. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And so to any members of the public who are viewing, if you have a question or a comment, please put that into the chat feature of WebEx, and we will be monitoring that. And that will be the opportunity to make comments or ask questions as that portion of in that portion of the agenda, and then we will adjourn. So just a little bit about this work group. This is, we've each been appointed by County Executive Olszewski to serve on this group, which broadly, given the name of the work group itself, touches on affordable housing in Baltimore County. And certainly the need for housing diversity, for affordability, is something that is broadly recognized, and it's a challenge that's not unique to Baltimore County. It's a challenge that's shared by large jurisdictions throughout the country. But we're here to talk about what's Baltimore County's approach going to be to that problem, and what solutions should we be looking at? What incentives should we be looking at? Just reading from the charge of the work group, which was included within the executive order that established this body. The work group will examine and make recommendations on the creation of affordable housing in Baltimore County, including but not limited to the following issues: to solutions to support the creation of affordable housing throughout Baltimore County, potential incentives, policies, and legislation that support the creation of affordable housing, strategies and best practices for working with communities as new affordable housing projects are considered, input into an affordable housing strategic plan for Baltimore County, and advise on the establishment of a permanent housing board. With that, I think we can move on to the county executive, and then we'll have everyone introduce themselves. So, county executive, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Drew, and good afternoon to everyone. It is wonderful to be with you virtually. I want to thank everyone for allowing me to appoint you and saying yes and stepping up to serve. I think it's really critical that we are coming together to help shape the ongoing work to ensure access to quality housing for every resident of our county. I want to particularly thank Drew Vetter for chairing the work group. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Administrative Officer. And again, thanks to all of you for lending your expertise and your time and your talents to this initiative. Look, we believe in Baltimore County that access to quality housing is a fundamental right, and we want to do whatever we can to build stronger, more resilient neighborhoods. This is a critical part of that work. I'm really excited that this group has representatives not just from county government, but from industry and from the community. And I think that we have a group that will ensure that we are charting a path towards meeting both our legal, but also what I think is a moral obligation for our residents. So I'm sure you all are aware, and we'll be going over some of the history, including the 2016 voluntary compliance agreement that we entered into with HUD. I want to thank our administrative officer, Stacey Rogers, for her work on leading that overall effort. And I just want you all to know that my vision for the work group is to further supplement not just our VCA efforts, but to go even further. Obviously, that agreement binded us to commit to passage of the Home Act and to support, among other things, the creation and incentivization of 1,000 affordable housing units by 2027. To date, we are over 50% of that goal, with 506 approved hard units created, but we know that we have more to do, and your recommendations are critical to help us meet that goal and go even further. Also proud that most recently we created the county's first ever Department of Housing and Community Development. I think that was just recently this week, so I want to thank Councilman Patoka for his support of that legislation, as well as his work on this work group. Our budget for this year ahead includes funding to support that office, and as we plan long-term recovery, that department, the intention is for it to support and strengthen our neighborhoods and support housing stability. So again, going beyond what is just required to ensure that we're creating opportunities across the county. So enough of a priority for me to create the work group, to be here to kick things off with you, and to let you know that between Drew and the rest of our staff, we have the full support of Baltimore County behind you. I look forward to working with you. I look forward to seeing what comes of the recommendations from this work group and things that we can make actionable and move forward. So with that, I will turn things back over to you, Drew, and wish you all much success. And again, thank you for your time and talents for this initiative. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Thank you for joining us. I know you've got a busy schedule, so it means a lot that you took some time to welcome this group and kick off this important work. Thank you for being here. So I think that next we will have members of the work group introduce themselves, and I'm trying to determine the best way to do that. We have a mix of county staff and work group members on the panel here. I think what I will do is probably just go down the list as they appear on my screen here. So I'll call out a name, and then if you could, as I call your name, please come off of mute and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the organization that you are representing. So the first name that I have here is Amir Asadi.
Good afternoon. My name is Amir Asadi. I have recently joined the Department of Planning, the Neighborhood Employment Improvement Units in the Grant Management Office as the Fiscal Administrator. I'm very much excited in the development of the new Department of Housing and joining that group and moving the efforts forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. We're pleased to be joined by county staff as part of this effort. So thank you for being here, and thank you, Director Lafferty, for including members of your organization. Next name I have is Amy Menzer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Menzer. I'm Director of Dundalk Renaissance Corporation, which is a small community development organization. We've done various mixed income strategies for revitalization, including affordable housing units and multifamily units, as well as a variety of other programs. So I'm happy to be here and also have some past policy advocacy experience in housing. So
thank you, Amy. Beth Seemick.
Good afternoon. I'm Beth Seemick. I work in the Office of Government Reform and Strategic Initiatives. I am the Program and Operations Manager, and I am happy to be here and be in support of this effort in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Chris Mudd.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Mudd. I'm an attorney at Venable in Towson. Work on land use and zoning matters, sort of in any number of disciplines, including some affordable housing cases. So I'm looking forward to bringing that perspective to this group. Thanks for including me.
Thanks, Chris. Colleen Mahoney.
Good afternoon, Colleen Mahoney. I am with the Baltimore County Department of Planning, Division of Neighborhood Improvement. It's the part that will be becoming part of the new Department of Housing and Community Development. And I oversee the federal and state funding that goes towards community development grants and affordable housing activities, along with the great other members of the team that are on the call.
Great, thank you, Colleen. Dan Pontius.
Hi, my name is Dan Pontius. I'm the Housing Policy Coordinator at the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. We're a nonprofit organization where all the counties and Baltimore City come together to cooperate mostly on transportation planning, but also on reservoir watershed protection. And I lead the housing work, where I help the local governments in their work that's cooperative work to carry out their duty to affirmatively their housing. To be here. Thanks very much.
Great, thank you, Dan. Daniel McCarthy.
Good afternoon, Dan McCarthy. I'm with the Episcopal Housing Corporation. We're a nonprofit real estate development company. And then we also are involved in the county in a number of programs through our Neighbor to Neighbor initiative that operates out of the now St. Francis Parish in Timonium.
Thank you. David Gilday. You're having a technical difficulty, David. We will come back to you. We'll move to Derek Johnson.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, thank you. Certainly want to thank County Executive for appointing me to this work group. My name is Derek Johnson. I work for the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. I've been with the state for about 14 years and Baltimore City Housing for about 8. I am currently a member of the Baltimore County Planning Board, and I look forward to putting ideas and thoughts together and working with all of you to provide a better tomorrow for Baltimore County.
Thank you. Felipe Filipino.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to be here. I am a professor of political science at UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I study the local dimension of immigration, including immigrant access to housing. I am a resident of Towson, and I co-chair a faith-based group of volunteers called the Latino Racial Justice Circle, which supports Latino immigrants in the Baltimore area in legal counsel, education, and other programs, including a COVID-19 humanitarian aid program that has dispersed help to many immigrant families in the area, and most of that help going to families that need to pay their rent.
Great, thank you, Felipe. Gloria Nelson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gloria Nelson, and I'm the president of the Turner Station Conservation Teams, which is a nonprofit community association that strives to develop a safe and healthy neighborhood through connecting people, ideas, and resources. And I certainly feel that this is a great resource to be a part of this work group. Housing is one of our primary initiatives within our community. So thank you very much for allowing me to serve.
Thank you. Gregory Countess.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gregory Countess. I've got a long title, Director of Advocacy for Housing and Community Economic Development with Maryland Legal Aid, formerly the Legal Aid Bureau. I've been working at Legal aide for a long period of time, and was, of course, counsel, or part of the counsel team in the case that filed the complaint and brought about the voluntary compliance agreement.
Thank you. James Benjamin, our county attorney.
Thank you, Drew. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm James Benjamin. I'm the county attorney for Baltimore County. I look forward to working with everybody in this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Williams.
Thanks, Drew, and County Executive for the opportunity. I'm Jason Williams, the CEO of Mason-Dixon Companies, a minority-owned community development firm with a development, construction, and supply arm, doing work all throughout the region, usually in partnership with incredible nonprofits, ensuring access to affordable housing, building with dignity, and developing with the community in mind. Thank you. Look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you. Jennifer Meacham.
Hi, I'm Jen Meacham with the Planning Department. I work in the Research Analysis and Design Group, and I've worked with the affordable housing data.
Thank you. Jim French.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim French, president of the French Companies. We're located in Baltimore City. We're a real estate developer and manager of affordable and market rate housing. Our company manages scattered site hard units in Baltimore County that are part of the Thompson Settlement Decree, and we've recently attempted to develop an affordable housing project in Overley until we ran into some community opposition and resistance from the councilperson in that district. So I'm very pleased to kind of begin to tackle these hard issues of how we create more affordable housing in Baltimore County. So thank you for allowing me to serve.
Thank you. Joy Roberts.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joy Roberts. I am the policy fellow serving with the Department of Health and Human Services under the Office of Housing and Community Development. I just graduated with my master's in public health and policy. A lot of the work that I've been doing in my fellowship has been centered around eviction prevention and affordable housing, and I'm very much so looking forward to contributing and being a part of this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Justin Williams.
Good afternoon. I'm Justin Williams. I'm a land use and zoning attorney at the law firm Rosenberg Martin Greenberg. Our office is in the city, but my work includes working on projects throughout the region that include affordable housing and market rate housing development. As the county executive has said, I credit him a lot for pointing this out in rooms he doesn't have to, is that the county and city's fates are intertwined, and I respect his emphasis and push on this project when he doesn't necessarily have to do so. And I'm happy to be part of the project and moving things forward.
Thanks for joining us, Justin. Kara Beverly.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kara D. Beverly. I am an attorney by trade and work at Johns Hopkins University, but I dedicate much of my time working with organizations that promote the interests of women and children in the greater Baltimore area, specifically Baltimore County. I'm the past president of the board and current board member of the Women's Housing Coalition. I'm also the incoming president-elect of the Junior League of Baltimore. And I also have the pleasure of serving on the Baltimore County Commission for Women. So I'm a Towson resident and very happy to work with this impressive group. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Klaus Philipson.
Good afternoon. I'm an architect, have an office in the city. I'm a Catesville resident and until recently longtime community association president. I'm a member of the Social Determinants of Health group that has a subcommittee for housing, and I designed affordable housing in the US as well as in Germany. Thank you.
Klaus. Kristen King.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kristen King. I work with Drew and Lisa in the Office of the Deputy County Administrative Officer. looking forward to participating in the group.
Thanks, Kristen. Marcia Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marcia Williams from Department of Finance. We work with first-time homeowners that create
Thank you, Marcia. We didn't quite catch all of that. The audio was very faint. So
okay, you want me to do it again? Can you hear me now?
That's perfect. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. My name is Marcia Williams. I work for the Department of Planning, Housing Finance. My division, we work with first-time home buyers, homeowners, landlords, nonprofit, and for-profit developers that create affordable housing. Look forward to working with the group.
Thank you. Marsha Parham Green.
Thank you, Drew. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I am so excited about the formation of this group. I am Marsha Parham Green. I have been with the county. I'm starting my 10th year, and I am the director of the Office of Housing. We administer the county's Housing Choice Voucher program, along with other boutique programs for individuals within Baltimore County. And prior to that, I was the director of finance for Anne Arundel County Housing Commission. And I work very closely with Dan to help solve some regional issues for housing authorities across the Baltimore region. So I'm extremely excited, and I look forward to the work.
Great, thank you, Marsha. Mary Clay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Clay, Special Assistant to Terry Hickey, who is the Deputy Director of the Office of Housing and Community Development. And very happy to say that the County Council approved the creation of the new department last night. So we are thrilled to be able to continue the work that we've been doing on community development, eviction prevention, homelessness prevention, and other housing services. Glad to see everyone today.
Thank you. Milana Vayner.
Hi, Milana Vayner, Assistant County Attorney in the Office of Law, and I'm here to support the work group.
Thanks, Milana. Patrick Stewart.
Hi, good afternoon. Patrick Stewart, not the famous one. I am Regional Vice President with Penrose. Penrose is a mission-driven developer and manager of multifamily housing. We have an historic focus on providing affordable housing opportunities. We've been active in Maryland for about 20 years, have not had the pleasure of working in Baltimore County yet. However, as a Baltimore County resident going on 2 years, this mission comes, it's very near and dear to my heart, both professionally and personally. I do want to commend County Executive Olszewski for getting this in motion, and I just really appreciate being a part of this group. I look forward to contributing and working with everyone. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Gutwalt.
Hey, everybody. I'm Pete Gutwalt. I am the current Director of Permits, Approvals, and Inspections. I was previously the Director of Planning, and I think I'm here to bridge the gap between Director Lafferty and Director Hickey. I have a lot of experience in working with affordable housing programs, not only in Baltimore County, but the city of Annapolis, as well as Harford County. So glad to be here.
Thanks, Pete. Ryan Coleman.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you, Drew. Ryan Coleman, President, Randallstown, NAACP. Obviously, we are a civil rights organization advocating for Black and Brown folk in Baltimore County. And I'm happy to be here. I'm glad that the county exec talked about that we have a moral obligation. Obviously, we do. So I'm excited to be here and excited to work with everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Madam Administrative Officer Stacey Rogers.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to join you and the Baltimore County colleagues. We have been working diligently in the area of compliance with respect to the voluntary compliance agreement since my arrival in 2019. And we're very excited about moving to the next level of the vision for affordable housing here in the county that is articulated in the county executive's transition plan and also in our enterprise-wide strategic plan. I'm pleased to be able to join Drew and all of you as we continue this journey for the vision of affordable housing in Baltimore County. It's my pleasure, and I look forward to the robust discussions that we will have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayo. Director Lafferty.
Thank you, Drew. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Steve Lafferty. I'm the Director of Planning for Baltimore County.
Thank you, Steve. And our next county official is given last night's council action. His title might be changing soon, but Terry Hickey.
Thanks, Drew. Pleasure to be here with everyone. Again, Terry Hickey. I'm currently serving as Deputy Director at Health and Human Services for Housing and Community Development. Just finishing up just over my first year with the county, and really, really excited to be here with all of you working on this topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Let's see. Lisa Morris.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Morris, and I also work for County Executive Olszewski. I'm happy to support the work group and its members in any way that I can. So please reach out and let me know if I can assist you.
Okay. All right. So this being the first time we're using the WebEx platform with this particular group, we have had a few members who I think I've been getting some emails, having some issues getting into the room. So for the members that are experiencing those technical difficulties, our apologies. We can work with you to ensure that you're able to access any future meetings. But I do see that for the most part, those that haven't been able to get on as a panelist have joined as attendees. I don't know that I'm able to bring you in for audio to introduce yourselves, but I do know that you are listening and I can see your name on the list here. So I just wanted to acknowledge you. We have Brian Glass from the Lockern Improvement Association. We have Leslie Dickinson from Disability Rights of Maryland on as well. I'm trying to see if there are any other work group members on the list. Oh, Marcia McLaughlin, who as a former county official, I believe in multiple jurisdictions, experience with planning and land use. Thank you for joining us, Marcia. Lisa and I will work with you on access issues moving forward. Again, I'm not sure that I'm able to bring you in on audio right now.
Also, I think Melissa Gambuto, Drew, as well.
Okay, thank you. Melissa Gambuto, who's representing the Maryland Multi-Housing Association as well. So thank you, Melissa. We also have the privilege of being joined on this work group by a member of our county council. Councilman Izzy Patoka is a member of the work group. I know that the councilman was coming from another engagement. I don't see him on the list yet. I know that he will be joining as soon as he is able. And as soon as we get him on as a panelist, we'll have the councilman introduce himself as well. But very honored to have a member of the council joining us in this important work as well. So with that, I want to thank everyone for the brief introductions. We've got a large group. I think we're doing pretty well to get through that 37 minutes in. Some of the housekeeping matters are already complete, and we will move to the presentation component in a second. But before we do so, I did just want to acknowledge that I appreciate both the panel and members of the public who are viewing for bearing with us as we continue to operate in a virtual environment. Ideally, we would all be together in the same room, which I think that, you know, we all understand and know the benefits of in-person interaction, but we have gotten used to operating in a virtual environment over the last year, which, you know, we've done as well as can be expected. We have a number of public work groups, just like this one, that have been meeting virtually over the last year. And, you know, given the circumstances, we're finding that this WebEx platform is working well and still provides for opportunities for engagement among members and also with members of the public. So albeit not ideal, we do appreciate everyone for kind of working with us in doing this virtually, and we'll continue to be in that mode for some period of time. I anticipate that at least the next few meetings of this work group will continue to be virtual. So just wanted to acknowledge that. So we have a data and background presentation that was put together by Dan Pontius from the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, and I want to sincerely thank Dan for doing homework in advance of the very first meeting and pulling together some really interesting regional data that bears on the issue at hand. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan. I think his presentation is somewhere in the range of 20 to 25 minutes. So we'll allow Dan to go through the slides. We'll leave time at the end for work group members to ask any questions of Dan about the data that he presented. Following Dan, we're going to ask Terry to go through some Baltimore County specific slides. We just have a handful of slides that pertain specifically to Baltimore County. So Dan, assuming that you've got the ability to share here, I'm going to turn it over to you for the presentation.
Drew, before we jump into the presentation, Councilmember Patoka has joined. I just got a text if you want to have him.
Thank you, Madam AO, and welcome, Councilman Patoka. If you're able to come off of mute and introduce yourself, the floor is yours. So I'm seeing Councilman Patoka on as an attendee and not as a panelist. So we may need to get that straightened out. Lisa, maybe you can I got a chat message from Justin Silverman in Patoka's office that he was running late. Maybe Lisa, if you could try to touch base with Justin and try to get the councilman on as a panelist, and then we'll have him introduce himself following the presentation.
Did that work? I just switched him over. Did that work?
It looks like it did.
Yes, it did. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you, everyone. I apologize for being a little late. I was on and listening in, but I was an attendee. So I couldn't participate in the introductions, but I'm happy to do so now. Councilman Izzy Patoka, representing the County Council and the 2nd District of Baltimore County. Just want to thank everyone for this very important work that we are about to begin. This is the 3rd work group that I have been a member of, and I will tell you from my experience in other work groups that you come out thinking differently than when you go in. And so it's a great learning experience for me as a councilman, and I think for each of you as members of this work group. I think that we'll all understand the subject matter, this very important subject matter, as it pertains to equity in housing for all residents of Baltimore County. And so with that, I'll just stop. I know I don't want to delay the meeting any further. But thank you, Drew, and thank you, Madam County Administrator, and all of the participants for giving us some of your afternoon today.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay, Dan, if you're ready, take it away.
Great, I believe I can share. Slideshow started here.
We can see it.
The slideshow. Okay, terrific. Great. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this group and to do this presentation. I have the pleasure of, as Marcia mentioned, I have the pleasure of working with Marcia Parham Green and Terry and a bunch of other folks on this call on our joint work around the region. A lot of these slides will be very familiar to Marcia, who plays a real leadership role with the public housing agencies around the region. And this took a lot of work, as Marcia well knows, so I'm really glad to have another use for it. So what I'm going to do is just try to share some data and some analysis, much of which we just finished last year, that hopefully will provide a helpful context for this group. Started by really just talking about the Fair Housing Act, which is sort of it's very much the context for my work at BMC. I help the local governments and public housing agencies carry out their fair housing responsibilities on a regional level. It was the last big civil rights act of the 1960s. In fact, after the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself kind of shifted his attention to housing and kind of famously moved to Chicago, moved his whole family to a segregated area of Chicago to draw attention to housing disparities and segregation. And in fact, the Fair Housing Act was introduced in Congress in 1966, but tragically it wasn't until Dr. King's assassination in 1968 that public frustration and the fighting around the country really dislodged this law from Congress and President Johnson signed it into law literally a week after Dr. King was killed. So it originally prohibited discrimination based on a number of characteristics, including race, color, religion, national origin. Disability and familial status were added in 1988. The state of Maryland and Baltimore County add additional protections. But it also, let me talk a little bit about some more of the context for the passage of the Fair Housing Act, and that for me is most vividly represented by this 1937 redlining map of Baltimore. It's mostly focused on Baltimore City, but if you look closely, you can kind of see the city limits, and some of Baltimore County is included in this map, even though it's from way back in 1937. Before the foreclosure crisis of 2008, the last big foreclosure crisis was the Great Depression, and there was no TARP in 1930, so banks were going out of business, and the federal government decided, wow, we got to let these banks know what's a good investment and what's a bad investment. And this was at the height of the legitimacy of eugenics, and literally a man who wrote his PhD, in his PhD described how different nationalities and races of people affect land values. His name is Homer Hoyt, he became the guy in charge of these redlining maps. And what they did was the dark green areas here, which at the time were the newest Roland Park Company developments, Guilford, Homeland, Northwood, and Baltimore City, that were restricted to white people only. They said those are the very best investments. Banks should lend there at the lowest rates. And on the other end of the spectrum, the redlined areas, they said these are the areas where African Americans lived, lower income immigrants, industry was located there, and they said these are the worst investments. You should probably not issue any mortgages here at all, or if you do, issue them at the highest rates. And the ideology of these maps really pervaded the construction of the suburbs over the following decades. If you were a developer and you built a new development, probably in the suburbs, restricted by deed to white people only, you got federal construction loan guarantees. The people who lived in your new property got federally backed FHA low interest 30-year mortgages, 98% of which from the 30s to the 60s went to white homeowners. And if you were in these redlined areas, you most likely had to pay rent to a white landlord. It might be very high rent. You might live in a substandard building, or maybe you could get access to a high interest mortgage loan, or more likely probably contract lending. And then also the federal investment in these redlined areas really turned out to be public housing, starting in the 30s for decades to come. And all the tension over the legacy of these redlining maps and their impact on the shaping of the suburbs over the coming decades really shaped a lot of the unrest that swept the country, even following passage of the Voting Rights Act. And that was the subject of the Kerner Commission report. If you read the Kerner Commission report, a lot of it is about substandard housing, segregated areas, which are called ghettos in the Commission report. And so it's because of that legacy that not only did the Fair Housing Act prohibit discrimination, but there's also a clause in here that says the Secretary of HUD has to administer their programs in a way that affirmatively furthers the goals of the law, that tries to undo what they recognized by the passage of the Fair Housing Act was a harmful and wrong promotion of segregation by the federal government. HUD then passes this duty on to its grantees, so it passes it on to the state of Maryland and local governments like Baltimore County through annual certifications. And that annual certification, that was the basis for the 2011 Fair Housing Complaint and the 2016 Voluntary Conciliation Agreement. It was also the basis for this analysis that a few of you were involved in, that we just finished in 2020, this analysis of fair housing choice. And I mentioned that really the concentration of African Americans in formerly redlined areas really was a huge issue. And in fact, HUD's guidance tells us to still do this analysis. Look for where are places that are more than half people of color and that are more than 3 times the region's poverty rate. And that's 38.5% poverty. That's really high, really concentrated poverty. That's the dark orange census tracts on this map. You can see that they are all in the city of Baltimore. You can see that they're located in a lot of those areas that were redlined in 1937. This we're 80 years later now. The light orange census tracts are what we called edge RCAPs. Those are areas that where the poverty is between 30 and 38%. So not quite as concentrated poverty, but even those areas you can see are primarily in the city of Baltimore. There's a few tracts in Baltimore County and Harford County. And even now, the public housing in the region, which is primarily in Baltimore City and Anne Arundel County, literally most of the units of public housing are in these dark orange, highly concentrated only 29 census tracts out of 631. So moving on to sort of broader racial demographics, these are a couple of maps from a 2014 housing plan that we published. The first from 1980, and so you can see even 40 years past the redlining map and 12 years past the passage of the Fair Housing Act, overall African American population in the region was really heavily concentrated within the city of Baltimore. And then the other map is from 30 years later in 2010, and you can see even this far after the redlining map and the Fair Housing Act, our region is characterized mostly by shifting patterns of segregation. In fact, there are, kind of looking at Baltimore County, in the northwest part of Baltimore County, there are actually 19 census tracts that were more than 75% white in 1980 and more than 75% African American. And then these are some of the latest maps from our analysis last year. You can see African Americans continue to be highly segregated in our metropolitan area at the top. The darkest shaded area is more than 90% African American. Racial group in our region that kind of approaches the Black population and the levels of segregation is the non-Hispanic white population. And so here you see the population in the region with the darkest area here being more than 80%. And those segregation, those demographic patterns, they matter. Again, 80 years after that redlining map, we had the foreclosure crisis of 2008. Subprime loans were disproportionately used in areas with high concentrations of African American population. And then those homeowners were disproportionately hit with the foreclosure crisis. You can see this map compared to the demographic patterns I just showed you, shows why this latest foreclosure crisis across the country wiped out half of Black wealth, because Black wealth is so concentrated in. And this is one reason why, coming out of this fair housing analysis we just completed, really tackling that homeownership, the racial gap in homeownership that has so many implications for wealth building and that is just as wide as it was when the Fair Housing Act was passed, is one of the major action steps we have coming out of this analysis. Back in a 2014 report that we did an opportunity map working with the University of Maryland National Center for Smart Growth. We looked at a bunch of indicators. The most prominent ones are listed here. They are not racial indicators. The one racial indicator is racial diversity. And then this map may look familiar. The two darkest areas of the map are what we call the high opportunity areas. And in Baltimore County, this map actually provided the basis for the voluntary conciliation map. So the areas where the county is obligated to build affordable housing are these two darkest shaded areas, the highest opportunity areas. There are a few census tracts in the middle shade of this map where development is limited to a certain number of. And so for this latest analysis, we took that map from 2014 and we did an analysis. We said, okay, where do people live in the region? And in fact, this bar graph shows that when you put everybody together in the region, this far right set of bars, the plurality of people in the region live in those high opportunity census tracts. And that, in fact, is true for every racial and ethnic group in the region, except for African Americans. And so, again, 80 years after that redlining map, African Americans still, it's kind of the mirror image of the white pattern of residents in the region. Live predominantly in the lower opportunity areas. There's another opportunity map here. This is used by the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership. It runs the regional mobility program coming out of the Thompson versus HUD fair housing lawsuit. And this is a really finely tuned map. And we use it for the regional project-based voucher program that I work with Marcia on out of the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. They use similar indicators and they really change it year to year. And so we did the same analysis and got the same result. So these are the disparities that are still with us 80 years after that redlining map that we're still working to address region-wide, and the nation has to do this too. The last opportunity map I want to show you is an online map. You can see it yourself at opportunityatlas.org. It's done by Raj Chetty. He's a Harvard economist. He kind of rose to fame doing a new analysis of the moving to opportunity data. That was a HUD rigorous randomized controlled trial effort in the 1990s that sort of looms large in the Baltimore region and in Baltimore County. And the early results of that program were not promising, but Raj Chetty got the data, was able to do another analysis after these kids who had moved during this program in the 1990s had grown up, and he looked at what the longer term effects were, and the longer term effects were astounding. So he then, what the basis for this map is that he somehow got 20 million records for 20 million kids born between 1978 and 1983. And he somehow got longitudinal data and had data for their status when they were 35 too, so between 2013 and 2018. And so this is the map. What I'm showing you right now is the map of median income by census tract for these kids, low-income kids. These are low-income kids of all races who were born in these census tracts and grew up in these census tracts starting in 1978 to 1980. So it's really closer to that 1980. But it reflects their income at 35, mapped back to where they grew up. So these maps are fairly astonishing, showing the correlation between where kids grow up and in this case, their income as adults. There are other indicators that you can check out on this map as well. But so that's the framing, just sort of the shape of the region in terms of where people live and its implications for wealth building and opportunity. The next thing we had to move to in this analysis that we finished last year, as I said, that duty that the Fair Housing Act imposes is for how we operate our housing programs. So we took a look at our housing programs in the region. This is HUD data for HUD supported housing, who occupies the HUD supported housing by race. And you can see the public housing, so that's housing literally owned by public housing authorities in the region. That is more than 90% African American. What we find in this data is that generally speaking, the housing programs that we operate disproportionately serve African Americans, who we just saw what the patterns are in terms of our. The Housing Choice Voucher Program is more than 80% African American. The one publicly supported housing program that is not so disproportionate is what's listed on this as other multifamily. It's predominantly senior housing. So in senior housing, that's where the white population of senior housing actually approximates its share of the region's population, which is 56%. And so because of that, and because of these patterns I just showed you in the region, we always separated out senior housing from housing that's open to families. And so here is some data on overall housing in the region, and then publicly assisted affordable housing. So, and this is more than just HUD. Most of it is HUD supported, but it's more than that. So we have about 960,000 total housing units in the region. We have about 26,000 general occupancy assisted housing. Those are homes that are open to anyone. And then we have about 17,000 publicly assisted housing units in the region that are restricted to senior citizens. And that's somewhat remarkable because if you look at the data that the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development compiles, it shows that the unmet need for affordable housing is really only about a quarter of seniors. And here you can see that housing that's restricted to seniors approaches 40% of the total assisted housing of the region. And you can see that's true in every jurisdiction, although Baltimore County is even more remarkable because Baltimore County literally almost has twice as much publicly assisted housing that's restricted to seniors as housing that's open to families. And the context for this too is seniors can and do live in general occupancy assisted housing. So that's why we really focused our analysis last year on, and because it's also a protected class under the Fair Housing Act, on families with children, our housing programs that serve families with children. And so here's a bar chart. It's the same data, but looking at percentages. The blue bars on these charts are the jurisdiction's share of the total housing units. So you can see, and then the light green bars are publicly assisted housing that's open to everyone. So you can see Baltimore City only has a quarter of the region's population, but nearly 2/3 of the region's publicly assisted housing that's open to families. The little city of Annapolis is even more has a disparity actually. And then every other jurisdiction has less publicly assisted general occupancy housing than share of the total housing. It's in Baltimore County, you can see the gap there as well. It's the largest in the region, although Anne Arundel County has kind of approached it. And then we took a look at this housing and we mapped it on that green opportunity map that I showed you that the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership uses. And here you can see that that in terms of the housing that's in BRHP opportunity areas, even though there's not as much region-wide, more of it is in opportunity areas than the general occupancy housing. And that's even more of a disparity in Baltimore County. In fact, Baltimore City actually has more general occupancy assisted homes open to families in opportunity areas than and this is the same type of, this is the same data just represented as a percentage, how much of each type of housing each jurisdiction is in those BRHP opportunity areas. You can see in general, more of the senior housing is in those opportunity areas, and that's even more pronounced in. And then these last couple slides, we just mapped. So here you can see it geographically mapped over that first opportunity map, again, the one that is the basis for the Baltimore County VCA. And here you can see publicly assisted homes open to families in Baltimore County. Here you can see sort of geographically where it is. Small dots on this map are actually scattered site units from the Thompson versus HUD lawsuit. So the numbers you can see are very small. And then the last map I'll show you is the publicly assisted homes restricted to elderly in Baltimore County. And just, I mean, if you can see, I know there's been some talk of the publicly assisted housing, affordable housing in Towson and Pikesville. You can see that that housing is not really generally open to in Towson and Pikesville. It's senior affordable housing that is located in, and you can see in general the opportunity areas, that's the type of housing that's located there. So that's a little, that's a series of context, both in terms of sort of the philosophy, the framework of the Fair Housing Act and opportunity that shaped this analysis that we did region-wide, that all the jurisdictions were able to take advantage of, and hopefully we provided some economies of scale doing this region-wide, and how it relates to affordable housing that exists in Baltimore County right now. Very much. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Dan. Very relevant and interesting data that really defines the scope of some of the issues that we're going to be grappling with on this work group. So thank you for taking the time to put that together and to walk us through it. Before we move on, do any work group members or any other panelists have any questions for Dan about the information that he just presented?
I have one question. Dan, first of all, the historical perspective and background was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. With respect to the senior housing percentage and the overall percentage, well, the overall housing stock, does that take into consideration the unique situation here in the county where 25% of our population is 60 and older?
We did not kind of compare it to the populations in each jurisdiction. I wonder if we could get that data. I mean, we didn't sort of relate it to how many seniors live in each.
Okay. Because I know it shows double, but one of the issues of concern that we do have, just looking at the full population, even though we definitely know we have to look at the full continuum. The Baltimore County is unique in another aspect in terms of the number of seniors in the county. We're the second oldest county on the East Coast, which most people don't know that or factor that into some of the service delivery considerations.
Yeah, I have to admit that we did not compare that jurisdiction by jurisdiction. I could check to see if that data, how readily available that data is. I would think it's pretty easy to get. But we didn't do that analysis.
A few work group members have sent me messages that they have questions, which is certainly a fine way to do it, so I can recognize them. The other thing the other feature that we could use, which myself and Lisa can monitor as host of the meeting, is the little hand raise button. So if you see that on your screen, for me, it's sort of below the list of participant names. There's a little symbol of a hand that'll put us on notice that you have a question, and feel free to use that as well, which we will monitor. But for now, I wanted to recognize Brian Coleman. If you want to come off of mute, Ryan, you had a question.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. I'll have to try to figure out that hand thing for you. Hey, Dan, quick question for you. I know it's a lot of negative connotation when you talk about affordable housing. My understanding of affordable housing was that it was less than 30% of your income. Can you just give us a definition of kind of affordable housing for us? Thank you.
Sure, and I'll try to make a point of speaking up. I have a message that my audio is a little low. This analysis that I shared was publicly assisted housing of all affordabilities, and so in general, the rule of thumb for affordable housing is that a family should only spend about 30% of their income on their housing. And so there is housing that's affordable at various levels. So public housing or the Housing Choice Voucher Program generally serves people at 30% of area median income or below. Area median income, I think, is about $100,000 for a family of 4 in this region. So that type of housing or project-based Section 8 housing is very deeply affordable. And then we also, the biggest source now of new affordable housing in the country is the low-income housing tax credit, which itself is affordable to people at 60% of area median income and below. So it's a whole range of affordability levels, and this analysis that I just showed you has all of those different levels of affordability in it. In terms of rental housing, I should also point out this is rental housing. It doesn't include say homeownership programs that include subsidies or that might kind of restrict the cost of the home for a lower income homeowner.
Thank you.
And Klaus had a question as well, which I'll just read. Dan, could you explain the very last map that you presented again, which provided the color codes in the legend? It was just a little bit difficult to read the legend, I think was the issue. So maybe we could pull that up again. And I'll also use, real quick, I'll use this as an opportunity to say that the documents that we review, the presentations that we review during these meetings, we will post to the work group's webpage. We have a designated webpage on the county website, so we can post documents there, so work group members and members of the public can refer to them later.
Trying to get back to, oh, here we go. Back, get out of this and come back to it here. Is this the these last 2 slides? Sounds like that's what Klaus, oh, in terms of the legend, yeah, the legend is very small on this map. So this is that opportunity map that I showed that divides the region into quintiles, and the darkest 2 shades of brown, those are the high opportunity. Those are what we labeled on this particular map the high opportunity census tracts. And as I mentioned, these 2 darkest brown shades on this map are the Baltimore County, essentially the Baltimore County VCA map. That's where the Baltimore County has committed to build publicly assisted homes that are open to families. So that's what the opportunity map represents. And then the green circles are sized by number of units of affordable housing. So the smallest dots are between 1 and 5 units. Then the next largest here is between 6 and 50 units. The third largest circle is between 51 and 125 units. And then the very largest green circles are 126 or more units. So this is, again, this is the publicly assisted homes restricted to senior citizens in Baltimore County, overlaid over on this this opportunity map. And then these are the circles, or actually on this map, they're kind of rounded squares. And I'll read off the legend here too. So the smallest little rounded square is between 1 and 5 units. As I said, that's mostly 1 unit on this map. The next largest is between 6 and 50. I think it's the same scale. The third largest is between 51 and 125. And then the largest rounded squares are 126 or more units. So.
If I could just add one other question. Did anybody analyze what part of the county zoning allows multifamily and which, just geographic spread, which parts don't?
You know, there is an analysis. Maybe I should try to back again and go back to in our analysis, and the well, this will get circulated afterwards. So, but I put a bit.ly link in here if people copy it down right now. You can go on the BMC website and find our analysis. It's at the very bottom of this slide right here. So if you go to bit.ly/regional.ai, and you can find, there is a chapter of our regional AI that does do an analysis of zoning in each jurisdiction. I don't have a map with me now, but if you go to this page on the BMC's website, you download the full document, just the executive summary and action steps, and then we have a set of appendices for those who really like to look at data. So,
and Klaus, that's a good question. You know, certainly we've got a number of members of our planning staff here that are capable of providing that type of analysis, which is one of the reasons why we have them participating. We're going to open the floor later for some discussion of recommended subcommittees. But one of the questions that I'll also be asking is what additional data or information would the work group like to review as part of our work here? And certainly, I think we could put that on the list. Okay, Councilman Patoka, did you have a question?
I did. Dan, that was a very interesting presentation and well done. I recently read Not in My Neighborhood by Antero Patia, and interesting, your data aligns with what Antero says in his book, and it's continued on into the 21st century. Just a question about the data source. Is it census data from the 2010 census, or does it look at development projects that are in the pipeline, or is it a blend of that? How is that data put together? And then I have one other comment about one of the unique qualities of Baltimore County.
It sounds like you're talking about the publicly assisted housing,
yes.
the data on that. That is only homes that are existing. We actually compiled that at BMC based on I started doing this work in 2012 as part of a HUD Sustainable Communities grant funded program called the Opportunity Collaborative, and our housing consultant for that project did a whole inventory of affordable housing, and then we took that and we spent a lot of time sort of linking that to the actual subsidies, the actual contracts, and we're doing that in order to look at preservation of affordable housing. We want to know when these contracts are expiring. So this is data that we compiled based on a number of publicly available databases of affordable housing, and then also information from Maryland DHCD. It stops at about 2018, and so it probably doesn't include, there's a couple of additional developments that have come online since then that are not on the map, and it does not include, to your point, the developments in the pipeline, because there are some tax credits that have been awarded, developments that are under.
Thanks. And the only other comment I had was, while Baltimore County is a big county, and the planners will talk about this, we have the urban rural demarcation line, and it aligns with our metropolitan sewer and water system. And so it kind of shrinks the county a bit in terms of where there are opportunities, mostly because of the opportunity for water and sewer for larger scale development. So it's smaller in geography if you maintain that urban-rural demarcation line.
Right, we do, in that section that I mentioned to Klaus on zoning, I think we do discuss that, do have a little discussion about that in the fair housing analysis.
Thank you,
And I
Dan.
think, Councilman, that's another item that we could put on the list for further explanation and some maps at a future meeting. I think it would be appropriate and relevant for a member of county staff to familiarize the work group with what we call the ERDL is and how that impacts our discussions here.
Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing any further questions for Dan. So Dan, thank you again. We appreciate it. I think now we're going to turn it over to Terry Hickey, who has just, I think, 3 or 4 slides that go into a little bit more detail with Baltimore County and some dashboard data of where we are with affordable housing development.
Great, thanks, Drew. Not as grand as what Dan just presented, but we'll make it quick. I know we've got to get to some business. So Lisa's going to pull up a handful of slides. Thank you, Lisa. And just while that's being teed up, just for context, these slides were pulled from our housing stat, which we just recently held. The county executive has designated a few important topics for what he calls priority stats. And so housing homelessness stat focuses alternatingly on affordable housing, homelessness, and also a number of the housing stability initiatives, eviction prevention, and others during the pandemic. So even though I think you're going to hear a constant theme that this work group is about the broader context of affordable housing and not lasering in on the VCA is an important piece of this whole discussion and also a sort of tool to measure progress by. So we wanted to give you a little bit of context as it relates to kind of up to date where we are on the VCA. And then you'll have this with you to refer back to. So next slide, please. This is just a quick summary. You can see highlighted on the left side, and the county executive alluded to this in the beginning of his comments. A lot of things in the VCA, but simply put, it requires 1,000 new hard units over a 12-year period. Those hard units need to be through construction, substantial rehab, or acquisition. They need to be located in areas of opportunity. Some things that we'll touch on as themes later. 100 of those 1,000 units need to be UFAS compliant, accessible. A UFAS is a tool used to determine accessibility, primarily mobility accessible. 500 of the total units constructed must be 3+ bedrooms. And then the other part that's not talked about quite as much in the VCA as the development of hard units is the mobility program. So within the Office of Housing that's overseen by Marsha Parham Green, also on the work group, the county operates a mobility counseling program, which is designed to help support the move of families from areas of concentrated poverty to areas of opportunity. It could be into hard units that are developed under the VCA or not. There's a variety of ways, and I'm sure this will continue to come up in conversation about families moving to areas of opportunity. And under the VCA, the county is required to assist with the location of 2,000 families in certain defined census tracts. Now, we'll get to some specific outcome goals in a minute, but you can see over the course of time, progress is being made. The county's contributed $30 million plus to date to leverage financing for hard unit creation. That continues with a $3 million capital investment in the budget for the next several years. The county's currently, as the county executive had indicated, over halfway through their required goals on hard units and are ahead of the pace on mobility moves as well. I think really though, we want to focus in many ways on the challenges. UFAS compliant units, incredibly important, providing housing for people with accessibility needs, are difficult to secure, they're more expensive to construct, they require different configurations, and that's something that the county's currently working through strategies to address. Also, because of how they're located and how many can be put in multifamily units, 3+ bedrooms are somewhat of a challenge and really need to be a focus. How to develop affordable units within proposed projects is an ongoing concern. You can see that the county's invested $30 million over the last number of years. That money's been expended. As we continue to move forward, I think this was noted in a recent Sun article, and it's been discussed, I think, generally, that we need to continue to leverage funding and look for more innovative ways to incentivize and underwrite the construction of affordable housing in the county. A couple quick things too, which are incredibly important, and I think will also be the topic of discussion here, is that when the county entered into the VCA and in the years following, there wasn't an overall strategic plan for affordable housing. In many ways, some of this work was still responsive or reactive as opposed to proactive and strategic. And so one of the things that's being discussed in the VCA context, which would be a great topic of conversation here, is what goes into a strategic plan like that. And that's something that the county intends to move forward with assistance from outside support and internal expertise. And then finally, I think it's an important conversation to have. There continues to be, and this sounds very simple with the bullet, it says continued community opposition. I think that can mean a lot of things. In many cases, it's simply discussing the facts and understanding what affordable housing is and what are the different ways it can happen. And personally, one of the things the pandemic has really interrupted is the continuation and growth of face-to-face discussions about affordable housing and the need. And many of you are having these conversations and you bring a lot of that to the table. So I don't believe that this should be an insurmountable obstacle, but there's a lot of good, healthy discussion that really needs to happen and a lot of planning to make sure that we can ensure that this type of housing is a win-win for everyone in the county. Next slide. Just a couple of quick slides to give you some context, and this will play off of some of the things that Dan showed. So what's in the upper right, the county recently, and thank you, Director Gutwalt, Director Lafferty, participated in an analysis of different issues related to the development of hard units for affordable housing. This was triggered by a clause in the VCA that requires the county to report out 90 days after the end of a measurement period if the county fails to meet an interim goal. And you can see from the bottom left, that's something you can kind of look through on your own, that every year of the VCA was planned out interim goals in each of these overarching areas that are represented on the top right. You can see that the 2020, these are cumulative goals. So you can see that the 2020 goal cumulatively for approved units of approved hard units, these aren't fully constructed, but approved units sat at 570. The county sits at 546. And so that triggered an analysis, which you were provided a link to in your documents, so you can take a look at exactly what the county's analysis showed. And then for those looking really closely, you'll notice all the way to the right, accessible units leased. Now, these are units that meet the UFAS guidelines that we talked about earlier, which are quite stringent and very involved. And it shows that we are currently ahead. However, it's got a star next to it, and that star is because there are a cluster of units that were developed several years ago that it is unclear if they meet those UFAS guidelines. So the county is currently in the process of working with an architect to assess those units and determine where they are and what it would take, if needed, to upgrade those units to full UFAS compliance. So that number is subject to change. That's something that we'll be dealing with as we move forward. Next slide, please. And then just very quickly, this is on the website under the VCA section on the Department of Planning website. This really, Dan, aligns with the map that you showed and just shows where the predominance of units created under the VCA need to exist, in large part because of all the things that you gave us in the context of your presentation. So I won't go back over that, but just something to give you some local context and tie this a little bit to the VCA. Drew, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you for
sorry. No, one more. I missed a big one. We're next steps. Sorry. And these things I think we've talked about to some degree already. The council voted last night to authorize the creation of a new consolidated Department of Housing and Community Development, which says a lot about the county and the county executive's interest in moving forward on these issues. We're here today as part of launching the county executive's work group to address short and medium-term recommendations and strategies for incentivizing the development. We are talking about a comprehensive strategic plan for affordable housing that would operate in concert with the master plan, the county's tenure master planning effort, which is currently in the process of kicking off. We are working as a county government directly with HUD and key partners such as Enterprise, community partners, on technical assistance around areas related to the development of affordable housing and related projects such as mobility. And I mentioned the need to look at different mechanisms for leveraging funding around these projects. And really a big part of this is making sure that we have the ability to collect and identify data. One of the things the county just did was hire a project analyst for VCStat, solely focused on housing issues, and other staffing to help improve in those areas. So things we're doing to move forward, and we look forward to hearing the input from this group as well. Now back to you, Drew.
Thank you for presenting that information, Terry. Before we move on, any questions for Terry? All right, not seeing any raised hands or questions at this time. So Lisa, maybe if we could toggle back over to the agenda. Thank you. Okay. So we addressed a few questions from work group members and panelists at the conclusion of each of those two presentations. But I think now, we're just going to kind of open the floor. You've been hearing a lot of information from us. We wanted to give members of the work group an opportunity to just describe their, your perceptions of the issue, particular areas that you would like the work group to focus on. And I would like to ask information that you'd like to review, data that we need to see, best practices that we should be looking at. And I think I'd like to blend that with the next bullet point as well. We have a large group here. There are a lot of components to this issue. There's policy, there's legislation, there's zoning, there's best practices. So sort of as work group members are offering their thoughts, I also wanted to just hear some suggestions on potential ways that we could divide the larger group into some work groups to help advance our work here. And I think that the plan would be we take some feedback from you on recommended work groups today. We come back to our next meeting to recommend a work group structure for the approval of the group, and then we'll sort of sort ourselves into the various work groups from there following the next meeting. So I think that the next two components, open comments and subcommittees, will sort of blend into one, and we'll just open the floor. I see Felipe has his hand raised, so why don't we go to you, Felipe, and you can break the ice for us.
Sure. I noticed in Terry's slide, one of the slides, that one of the challenges is community opposition to affordable housing. And we know that that's a very big challenge. And my question is, do we have in place any, best practices or procedures to handle these conflicts that tend to emerge? I know I'm more or less familiar with, the controversy in East Towson. I know I think that ended up being judicialized. I know that having the money and knowing, having the data to inform where the affordable housing should go to is not enough, right? At the end, we have to go through these community controversies, and I'm wondering if there is any procedure, method in place to help communities be more willing to accommodate this type of development.
Drew, I'll just say something real quick to that, Felipe. And I think this is an area, and I said in a recent hearing with the council that I'd like to hear, and a panel I was on, that I'd like to hear more public dialogue about what folks think is needed. I can say that as a collective group, and I'm speaking for some of the other directors that have been working around the VCA planning and PAI and others, we recognize these conversations need to be more upstream. I think in the past, there's been a tendency to be more reactive, reacting to specific development projects that have already been scoped out. There obviously needs to be a bigger strategic plan and things in place. That is something that's being thought through. But I think more upstream conversations with community, having developers out in the community and speaking to elected officials, we know the more upstream, the better. So that's a very simplistic answer to the question, but I think we need to do it and get ahead of those conversations and provide education and listen better, frankly. But I'm curious to see what others have to say.
Any, I guess I'll ask any of the county staff or department heads that are online if they want to offer any reaction to Felipe's question there. I think certainly we recognize that navigating that needs to be is one of the focuses of the group and is sort of ingrained in any particular project that we discuss. And so I thank you for raising it, and I do think it's something that we should discuss. So before we move on, I just wanted to give anyone in addition to Terry the opportunity to react to that.
This is Steve. I'll just add, I think this is one of the most critical elements of the conversation that this group hopefully will have, because certainly it gets down to the very basic values that people have and often fears unrealistically that we have to grapple with. But to the direct question, no, we don't have best practices in place. I will give Pete Gutwalt credit, though, because when he was sitting in planning, he recognized that if a developer came to us, the first stop had to be the county council member, because he or she could either put them in touch with the right community groups for the conversation, or could demonstrate an opposition that would have to be overcome if a developer were to proceed. So we've had some success with that approach, where going to the council member first with the developer, side by side, saying, what do you think, council member? And that then has opened up opportunities that I think probably weren't as welcome in the past. It's also led to recognition in some instances that no, this is not going to be a plan that will succeed. But knowing that up front, one, saves the developer a lot of time and investment, and also gets the council member engaged at the juncture where he or she needs to be. And so I think we created a pattern now, started by Pete, that really is, we can build upon it and improve it, but I think it sets the right tone.
Thank you, Steve, for offering your thoughts there. Amy Menzer has her hand raised. Amy.
Thanks, Drew. I guess there were two things I wanted to raise. One, I think we need to look at some broad policy things, and I used to think maybe Baltimore County was beyond rescue from something like a moderately priced dwelling unit ordinance, given how built out the county is already. But when we're talking about how to find 500 units, maybe it's worth pursuing that. And then second, I'm hoping that the strategic plan and looking at the master plan, there'll be a much broader scale context for what is the overall current distribution of affordable housing, how old is that housing, what is the need, because obviously the scale and scope of the need so far exceeds the BCA. And I get it that that's a really, really important goal. And, that's the first step. But thinking about the broader scale of the need, maybe part of having that conversation where, I don't know, people start to think about it the way that they're thinking about the school system and the school system's investments in the school system. I'd like to see that broader scale.
Great, thank you, Amy. Klaus has his hand raised.
Yeah, I wrote the question also in the chat. Out of the federal government, if the Biden administration gets some of these initiatives through, there will be a host of housing-oriented initiatives that totally turn around the federal housing policy from what it was in the last 4 years. And what we know about the structure of those programs, that would probably favor mostly existing housing authorities, existing housing stock, making it healthier, better, accessible, and so forth. But the question that I have is the county prepared to proactively kind of try to grab some of these programs should they actually become real? Because as I say, we're not fully organized and structured yet, but maybe there is an opportunity to actually get funding, since we heard the need for other sources.
Drew, I'm happy to address that part of it. Klaus, yes, our goal is to aggressively pursue resources. That's kind of our mantra here in the county, is to seek grant funding. And I think we've been very successful across the continuum of activities that we worked on. And I think some of our efforts, even during the pandemic, has demonstrated that we have the capacity. So I think that the potential is there. The county is more than willing to pursue grant funding for our priorities. And sky's the limit with respect to what would be coming from the federal pool of funding. We're always on the lookout.
Thank you, Madam AO. Just going down the list, Chris Mudd.
Thanks, Drew. In general, in the world I live in, land use and zoning and land development, I think that people just by human nature tend to fear change or sort of object to change off the bat. But more importantly, they fear things that they don't know and they don't understand. And so I think a primary objective of this group needs to be a robust and aggressive campaign to educate people throughout the county on what affordable housing is and what it is not. And importantly, within that is to point to concrete examples of where affordable housing has been successful and wonderful and beautiful. Everyone has their mindset, I think, on what it's going to turn into. And I think if we can demonstrate to people that not all developments turn into that and most don't, that can be a big help from the outset to at least allay some concerns. You're never going to allay all, but some. So I think that needs to be a major focus of this group.
Chris, I couldn't agree more.
Yep, certainly, and I think we're seeing that theme already emerge as something that we really need to be focused on. We have I have a note from Ryan Coleman suggesting a subcommittee around education and outreach. So I think that's a good suggestion, and so certainly something that we need to be focused on. Thanks, Chris.
I have a separate question. Can I ask it now?
You have the floor.
Or do you want to continue on? Thanks. And this, I'm not sure I'm going to ask this question in the right way, and it may be for the developers, or it may be for someone like Dan. But the question came before about zoning and overlaying where zoning is for multifamily housing, and it seems that most often you see affordable housing come in the format of multifamily housing, but does it have to? Is that part of the discussion as well? Can it take other formats?
Yes, Chris, this is Steve. Yes, in fact, scatter site opportunities are part of the effort under the VCA, but need not be related only to the VCA. They're more complicated in many respects, but and maybe Pete or Terry could build on that, or Marcia. But it's not just multifamily. But that's where you get the greater opportunities, is when you have more units that you can work with.
I understand your question, Chris. I guess, are you talking about, there's two ways to look at affordable housing. We're looking at it the whole context, right? There's rental, and then there's also, ownership, home ownership with affordable housing aspect. So, I'm trying to clarify your question. It's not just multifamily, but are you talking about sort of a, in the age-friendly thing, we're talking about accessibility, we're talking about multi-generational, and we're talking about mixed-use types of projects that would integrate affordable housing opportunities. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, I was also thinking that, can it take the shape, and this may be a little simplistic, but can it take the shape of townhomes instead of
Absolutely. We're right now. We're contemplating one right now about townhouse, single family detached, as Steve mentioned, and scattered. Scattered sites are also an option that we are dealing with single family rehabilitation. So those kinds of things.
And I guess it goes back to, Steve made this point, if you're trying to peel off as many units as you can at a time, that's where multifamily tends to be the direction. And it'd be interesting to hear from some of the developers too about whether they pursue particular type of development or product type doing these things.
Just to answer Chris's question, as a developer and manager of scattered site housing in the county, it's difficult, the larger scale projects, when you run into the opposition from communities who are talking about, school overcrowding and traffic concerns, environmental concerns, concerns about failing infrastructure, and you as the developer don't have any of the sort of objective data to share, or no one's there sort of as an ally from the county saying, actually this school is not overcrowded, or just to be able to counter some of the concerns that communities often express that are, really not concerns about those things, but concerns about other things. And on the scattered sites, they are, they're difficult, and they're difficult to manage. You have, greater costs in management when you have units that are, different. There's no standardization. So, I think that's a challenge. But, I would suggest, maybe we, put together a work group to look at sort of the different types and models and maybe financing for different types of housing.
I just thought I would chime in on Jim's heels. I think it's useful to distinguish between housing type and housing tenure. So I think typically, if you're thinking of townhouses, or in some cases even you see increasingly single-family rental. But generally speaking, I think a lot of what we see is affordable housing is rental. But there are many different ways to accomplish that. Many looks, different scales, different types of housing. So we've developed housing that, from the perspective of the street of the neighborhood, is indistinguishable from home ownership townhouse. So that it's definitely possible to do that. I would say that given all of the challenges that go along with creating affordable housing, there's an element of sort of an economy of scale, and so that there's a certain amount of density that tends to support the long-term viability of affordable housing communities. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I think Jim just alluded to some of the challenges that go along with developing and managing over the long term scattered site housing, for instance. And I think the real challenge is the sort of the collision of those two things is needing to have a certain amount of density for a project to be viable over the long term and to be successful, and then finding the space for that. And I think that's one of the key things in Baltimore County. So.
Thanks, Patrick. So keeping an eye on the clock, we have about 10 minutes to go. So just want to move to a little bit more rapid fire on the questions, knowing that we may have to address some of them at a future meeting. I think we got at least one comment in from a member of the public as well. So I wanted to give the opportunity to read that and react to that. And then we have a few housekeeping items to get through before we conclude today. So thanks. Just moving down the list. I'll call out the names, and then if you can bring yourselves off of mute in order. We've got hands raised from Gregory Countess, Councilman Patoka, Justin Williams, and Leslie Dickinson, who was able to join. So glad to see Leslie was able to make it on. So go ahead, Mr. Countess.
Thank you, Drew. And it's Greg, by the way. But thank you for the respect. Greg. Yeah, sure. And so I know I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but part of that conversation, it seems to me, I would agree with Mr. Mudd and others, but part of that conversation has to be that this is not really a choice. This is compelled because we have to follow the law. And I think that Richard Rothstein, I think that's the name of the author, who did Color of Law, is particularly pertinent and may assist us in this. And so I'd agree that we need not only some plan on how we get this out to folks, we need to do some messaging. And that messaging has to be that this is not an option. This is mandatory. This is something that has to occur in order for us to comply with the laws of this country.
Thank you, Greg. Couldn't agree more. Councilman Patoka.
Thank you, Drew. So clearly there is an issue with perception. It's really difficult to go out to a community meeting and convince folks that a teacher or firefighter qualifies for affordable housing. So I agree with everyone that we need to work on education and all the points that were made in terms of changing the perception of what affordable housing is, and not focus so much on the who is going to live there, but what is the development itself. And I say that because I think, and I'm going to offer this up as a subcommittee, Baltimore County has really struggled with having a strong, adequate public facilities ordinance because of our aging infrastructure. So somehow we have to kind of navigate what kind of development, irrespective of whether it's market rate, affordable, how does it fit into our available infrastructure. So we've had an adequate public facilities ordinance work group. I think we should kind of marry these groups together, and especially as we are in the beginning stages of the 2030 master plan, how do those two have a similar trajectory in that plan? And Klaus made a very good point about, well, there could be lots of federal dollars coming in with the American Rescue Plan. How does that fit into our 2030 master plan? And how does that fit in making our affordable housing plan fit with our adequate public facilities ordinance? And I think all of these need to fit together. I think everyone knows we have aging infrastructure. We have, right now schools in our current APFO can take up to 115% of capacity. So that's not a good situation. And it's not a good situation irrespective of whether the new development is market rate or affordable. So I think we need to kind of really address this in a way that addresses both our infrastructure and our requirement to meet the voluntary compliance agreement. And so I would suggest a work group to look at those two entities. I'm sorry, a committee rather than a work group.
Subcommittee.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilman. So we'll do Justin and Leslie, who have had their hands up for a while, and then we'll probably cut off the discussion there for today's meeting. Take a look at any public comments, and then address a few housekeeping items. So, Justin.
Thanks, Drew. I think building off of what Chris was saying, I think it'd be useful for a future meeting to have a presentation or an overview of the pipeline or universe of where residents would be coming from in the county and or city or the region, like voucher recipients who can go outside of city, county area versus people who just meet the income requirements you can apply for and live in a new development. And I have the same sort of, I guess, bias coming from Chris's same background dealing with community members, that there is that pushback for when there's dense development. But my sense is that a BRHP type program where you disperse voucher recipients all over the place and put one in a random home, a townhome, or detached or semi-detached home is a way to at least get more people out in good communities of opportunity without the pushback that comes from people seeing a big development coming out of the ground. And so I'd just be interested in learning more about how the county's funding is tied to that sort of stream, or is it just generally a pot of housing money versus anything under the sun we can think of?
So I think that Marcia's team would be able to provide that, because we actually, Mr. Williams, we actually have data on those individuals who have moved from one housing location into opportunity areas in the county. It's really interesting data. The other thing is about the housing choice program and the vouchers, where people can move with their voucher of their choice, as opposed to being placed where people come from with their voucher to an opportunity area. We do have data and we track that, and our strategy is how we get more of our voucher holders to areas of opportunity, which brings up the issue of other supports like transportation and other kinds of pieces. Because you go back to, I'm dating myself, but MTO, Move to Opportunity, the federal initiative, it's one thing to move from one place to another, help a person get there, but what is the infrastructure around and supports around that person that make them successful in a community. But we do have data to answer your question.
Great.
Thanks.
Leslie?
Can you hear me now?
We got you.
Okay. I did actually put something in the chat because I wasn't sure I could speak, but I've got, and that was just about different types of housing, that it doesn't have to be large buildings. But now I want to follow up on some of the other comments. And I agree with Councilman, well, I agree with Greg Countess, of course, completely, that this is actually something that we need to do, be in compliance with the Fair Housing Act. But what Councilman Potoko was saying, I think is really important in terms of integrating the master plan with this work group whenever we're doing whatever we're doing here. And this year for the, I guess it was enacted last year, but I know there's in the master plans, there are now a housing component of workforce housing and affordable housing. So as we go, because I'm on the planning commission in a small town, so we're doing our master plan as well. So as this time there's a housing element, so you have to look at affordable housing and workforce housing. And of course, workforce housing and affordable housing are two different things. So workforce, as the councilman was saying, firefighters and teachers and county, city staff, but affordable housing is of course what we're talking about here. They are certainly different. So I was actually wondering, also, I just have a follow-up question related to the VCA, the 2,000, moving 2,000 families. I'm pretty sure that those are families already in Baltimore County, not coming from, not porting vouchers from the city, I think. But also, I was just curious if anybody knows kind of the status of how that piece is going. Thank you.
Sure, and the mobility moves aren't necessarily even tied to vouchers. They're families moving from areas of concentrated poverty to areas of opportunity. The voucher can be incidental, but Marcia, who runs our housing office, oversees the mobility program. I don't know if she wanted to give a few quick updates.
Terry, I'm going to just jump in and suggest that we put that on a list of topics to cover at a future meeting, given the hour, it's 5 o'clock. But certainly that's something that we can dig into at a future meeting.
Got it.
So thank you, everyone. Quickly, we did receive one comment from a public participant in the meeting. And again, I think this is something that probably goes on a list for analysis at a future meeting, but I wanted to read it onto the record. This comes from Ann Dalrymple, and I apologize if I am mispronouncing your name, but the comment is, I hope you will be addressing the NLIHC gap report as you decide how much housing to make available. The current commitment is a drop in the bucket, really. I can provide a count as needed for the county based on census data. So thank you for that comment. Again, we'll put that on the list among other things of data points and information that the work group will be looking at. So we'll expedite the end of the meeting here. The housekeeping items that I really wanted to mention were kind of where we go from here. The executive order contemplates that this group will meet once a month for 6 months. So we wanted to make this a limited duration work group and get as much work done as we can in 6 months, culminating, all the work will culminate in a set of recommendations that will go to the county executive. Be they recommendations on just actions that the county should take, policies we should consider, implement, legislation we should pursue, etc. So Lisa and I and a few others put our heads together on a potential meeting schedule. Given the time, I won't go through each one of those dates now. I think as a follow-up to the meeting, we'll send a list of our proposed dates for the next 5 meetings to the email distribution list, and we'll get calendar invites out as well. But it'll be similar timing, you know, with the next meeting to happen approximately 1 month from today. I think what we'll do internally, you know, with our county staff is kind of take a look at the notes from today's session, look at some of the suggestions for work groups that were made, look at some of the additional requests for information. I think we can come back to the next meeting with as much of that information as we can gather for additional presentations. So that will be an agenda item at the next meeting. And I think what we'll do with respect to the subcommittees is take some of the feedback that we heard today, and we will come with a suggested list of subcommittees for the group's feedback and approval, hopefully at the next meeting. And then we could start the subcommittee work from there. I think that we'll have to discuss leadership of those subcommittees and how they get staffed as well. But that's a conversation we can have at the next meeting. So with that, I think that's everything that we wanted to cover today. It was a lot of information. This was a good first session. We did get into the weeds a little bit with the presentations, which is a good thing. So thank you for that. Thank you for the comments, and thank you to the members of the public that listened in as well. Again, a recording of this meeting will be available on the webpage. We will continue to communicate with the work group via the email distribution list. So expect to hear from us over email, and feel free to reach out with any additional thoughts or requests for information or suggestions for subcommittees to me over email as well, given the limited time that we had today. So with that, I will ask I'll ask Madam AO or any of our department heads if you have anything additional to add before we conclude. And from there, we'll conclude the meeting.
No, just Drew, to say thank you. This was a great start, very informative, and we look forward to working with everyone as we move forward, because we are truly committed to a vision for Baltimore County of affordable housing across the continuum, and helping to, again, educate individuals about what affordable housing means. I think that's going to be a big part of our work as we acknowledge today. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. We will go ahead and conclude today's meeting. So thank you, everyone, again, for your participation, and we'll send future meeting dates out over email. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Yeah, thanks.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Carrie, I'll call you.